Just close your eyes and gather your awareness to this present moment. And simply rest in the awareness of this present moment as I recite the beautiful mantra. Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Vandhanam Mrityurmukchiyamamritat Om Haum Om Jum Sah Vyam Veda Vyasaya Namaha Sahajum Om Asito Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Chitheads. My guest today is Swami Brahmananda Saraswati. Swami is an atypical monk. He trained as a monk in the Himalayas for 20 years and then came to the USA and studied physiology and health, then went on to medical school and is currently a graduate student at Johns Hopkins University, studying business with a focus on entrepreneurship, healthcare management, and organizational leadership. Drawing upon his diverse background and unique set of experiences, Swami designed deep mindfulness training, or DMT, for high performance and work-life harmony. Swami takes a very hands-on, no-fluff, engaging, and fun approach to help his clients develop high-performing cognitive abilities, emotional and social intelligence, deep motivation, and resilience. Swami believes that all individuals, teams, and groups of people are unique and have unique needs and learning aptitudes. Therefore, he created customized DMT programs with hand-selected training tools, frameworks, and strategies to maximize clients' performance and satisfaction. Deep mindfulness training is a custom mix of mindfulness practices and emotional quotient training tools, strategies, frameworks, and lifestyle recommendations. And we're going to talk a little bit about DMT and some of Swami's other projects today. So with that, thank you so much, Swami, for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you. So I wanted to get started just by talking a little bit about your story and, your own kind of spiritual path and what has led you to this inspiring, important work that you do today.
Well, thank you, Jacob. Thank you for welcoming me to this beautiful podcast.
So tell us a little bit about your own story.
Well, my story is it's simple. I was born in India to a nice little family of yogis, and from there on, I remember something that happened very early on, and depending on how you look at it, it can be a good thing that happened or a bad thing that happened. So there were, I had this memory of me being very little, like maybe under 1 year old, and looking at this wall. And on the other side, I could hear some people were banging on the wall, with hammers and other tools. And they broke down this wall. And then I saw about 20 people standing there with these tools, with these kind of dreadful, blank eyes, and just, broke down this wall. And then many years later, about 7, 8 years later, when I was a little bit older, I asked my mom that, Mom, I remember this thing. I have this memory. Something like this ever happened. And she said, Yes, that did happen. When you were very little, the city people came and they broke down the front wall of our house.
Mm.
And I said, okay, why did they do that? And she said, well, your dad is a very honest and righteous person, so he wouldn't pay the bribe they were asking for to sign the paperwork. And that's why they came and did it.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. But that incident, very early on kind of made me aware of this this vibration of ignorance,
Mm.
this energy of corruption and antipathy and just this violence
Hmm.
being there. And I didn't want to succumb to it or in any way be victim of it or entertain that in my life, do
Yeah.
that to anybody. So I guess that became a huge influence from the very beginning. And I wanted to create something opposite of that, something that ensured that people didn't treat each other this way. Because ultimately, on the other side of the wall, you have these 20 peoples. And I'm sure that they had families. They were not necessarily, like particularly bad people, but they engaged in this silly act of violence. They violated my family in some ways. And I was like, well, why? What is it that a group of people can come and do this? And how can we ensure that this does not happen and more people don't have to go through this? So there was this intention, this desire to do something that prevents this kind of energy to prevail. And then, as growing up, you get to see society, and in India, everything is very much in the open. Nothing
Yeah.
is. So you get to see the best and the worst of the society, and you just realize that there is a cycle. There's a cycle of ignorance and incoherent energy, and people are just falling prey to it. Not even consciously. People act, ignorantly, incoherently, out of ignorance, out of just being unconscious or not having been introduced to a better way.
Yeah.
So luckily I was born in a family of yogis. My parents, they from the very beginning gave me something that's opposite of that. And then they sent me to an ashram where I grew up,
Mm.
learning all about how to create coherence and lead a service of love and bliss. And it was so that's the story. And
Yeah.
then after that, I wanted to become a monk because I witnessed all kind of people, and I noticed that the people had moments, of happiness and sadness and fun, and then not so much fun. But one particular group of people seemed to have it best, and they were the monks. Now, you've been to India, so you have seen it that they're like kings without a kingdom. They're just walking around doing whatever they do. They do it fully. They're loving life. And they truly know how to make lemonade when you give them lemons. So every time I spent time with monks, I felt that they were so even and so happy and so productive uh, that I was inspired to lead a life like that. So around age 19, I went to my master and I was like, well, I want to just get ordained, and become a Swami and open up an ashram, and that's what I want to do. And she said, well, not so fast. Uh, she said that, well, you already have been learning all the Vedic knowledge, Vedic teachings, but the world is changing. And if you truly want to be a Swami and want to do justice to, that role in the society, then there's more that you need to learn. I say, well, what do you mean? Say, well, what is the purpose of being a Swami, being a monk? By this time, I knew that purpose of being a monk or Swami is about leading a life of service. which is so much fun, by the way.
Hmm.
So she said, if that is the purpose, if you really want to be able to serve, then you have to think about that. Are you good enough servant of humanity, or are there competencies that you still need to develop? And I said, well, you're right. The world is a new world, and maybe there are more things I need to learn. She said, well, go to a college and get some Western education. So I was like, okay. So I studied hard. I went to IITs in India, which is like MITs of India. And then I dropped out in 2 weeks. I was like, okay, this is for me. And the reason is academics were good, but the culture very much was there that we're going to study hard and become slave of some multinational company,
Yeah.
accumulate a lot of wealth, have a big house, swimming pool, uh, boats, and all those things. And that was not my dream. I was there to build competencies so I can be better servant. But I knew that how important it is to be surrounded by the right kind of culture, right kind of people.
Absolutely.
So I went back to ashram. I said, look, I studied hard. I got into this college, and it didn't work out. And she said, okay, I know a place. I said, okay, what is this place? And she said, well, go to America. I said, what? Are you out of your mind? I just left a college because I didn't want to go and become servant of some big multinational. You were sending me to the hub of it. And she was like, no, it's not like that. And then she sent me to America. I came to this beautiful university in the middle of Iowa,
Hmm.
Fairfield, Maharishi University of Management.
Hmm.
And it truly was like a little piece of Himalayas in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember reaching to the Chicago airport and then going to the university. And I'm like, okay, this seems odd. But then in the morning you wake up and there are these huge domes and you have like thousands of people just walking in the morning to sit down and meditate together. And you can feel that vibration, that energy. So
This is a college in Iowa
yeah,
that
this
has
is a
thousands of people meditating?
yes, yes. So there are thousands of people meditating. It was a university started by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. It's called Maharishi
Oh.
University of Management.
Oh.
And they had a beautiful program in computer science. I came as a computer science student, and then I switched to pre-med. So I studied physiology and health because that was more intriguing to me. And that's what I did there. I meditated, did research in consciousness, and studied health, and then went to medical school, and then now studying business. So this is the story, all basically for one purpose, which is to maximize my services to the humanity.
Yeah. So that's fascinating, and I can't believe I've never heard of this school that you went to, and I'm going to start telling everybody about it because more people need to do that. Go to college and meditate all day. That sounds amazing. So now I want to talk a little bit about, so you've been doing these incredible programs. I mentioned in your bio that you've started this deep mindfulness training, which we had a laugh before the interview started that that's the same acronym as DMT, which is a psychedelic. So I think that's great that we have a non-psychedelic form of DMT, and as you said, probably more potent. And then you also have the Swami Yoga Club, and so I just wanted you to talk a little bit about these for a moment. What is, what's the essence of deep mindfulness training? We'll start with that. What is the essence of deep mindfulness training?
Well, so deep mindfulness training is a mindfulness-based management program or training that I have designed for the people who really want to make a change in society, want to save the society through their entrepreneurial or other endeavors in life.
Right.
And being in business school, especially at Johns Hopkins, where most of the people are A type, uh, it's uh, it's interesting to see. Sometimes situations get heated up. People are feeling this high amount of pressure to be productive, and all that pressure and all this focus to complete the projects actually leads to less than what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of very intelligent, bright people fail or not do their best, not accomplish, what they're capable of, because they don't have the tools that they really need to succeed. I mean, they have the technical, a lot of time is spent on building analytical and technical skills, but you need more than that to succeed, to be able to create something beautiful, something powerful. And in my monkhood and my training as a monk, I realized that I have received that training, and that's something that's very essential. Almost everybody should have it. And there are three elements, to high performance. First is your cognitive abilities. To be able to perform and succeed and make a big change the right way, you need to have a strong nervous system, a highly capable nervous system. And your analytical abilities and technical abilities are just a fraction of that equation. You need to be able to focus, you need to be able to stay calm and cool, and you need to have that mental clarity, you need to have that mental flexibility. So how do you develop that? It's very easy, especially for high achievers, to get siloed in and get ultra focused just on the technical and analytical side of the brain's and the nervous system's abilities and not develop the other parts. So the first dimension is helping people develop more deeper cognitive abilities. And there are some tools out there, like some meditation apps and meditation services. But in my experience, people are unique. And especially when they are working in different fields, they have different needs. And the one-size-fits-all theory doesn't work.
Right.
And that's why even in spiritual traditions, you can see that ultimately the basic idea of meditation, mindfulness techniques is the same, but they devise so many different tools and techniques because they realized that there were so many different kind of people that were coming to become monks, and they had different needs. So that's the first area we address. We give the people tools and techniques to develop those higher cognitive abilities, basically how to become resilient and overcome all kind of stress and anxiety, being able to stay focused for long times, being able to stay mentally clear and flexible. So that part. Then there is second aspect of high performance, and that is about your heart and emotion. And we are animals, just like other animals on the planet, and we are social animals. And anytime we have a social situation, we experience emotions. Now, how good you are at understanding those emotions, regulating those emotions, moving those emotions, is going to basically define and determine that how successful you are going to be in whatever it is that you're trying to create and do. And if you look at the people who have been very successful in all different fields, you will find that they have been exceptionally emotionally intelligent. They have been very good at being able to understand their emotions and regulate it in some way, some in more sustainable way, some in not sustainable way, but they had some handle over it. And then the empathy is a big part of it, because if you are trying to create, especially in the world of business, you are trying to create something for others that others can use, you'll have to be able to understand them, their emotions, their needs. So you need to be able to tap into that. And that's beyond just the idea of measuring KPIs and stuff like that. So based on my training as a monk and training in the field of physiology and health, I have designed certain frameworks and tools that we customize for the teams or the people's needs, and we help them with that. I'll give you a little insight here in the EQ part. So there is Buddha talked about the lotus of the heart, and there are 6 petals to this lotus. And it's interesting, and let me draw it for you. So Uh, I'm very much a pen and paper guy. So
We'll have to explain this to the people who are listening because most people will just hear this on audio. So we'll explain what we're seeing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'll explain it as I'm drawing it for them. So let's
Okay,
say
perfect.
a little center of the lotus, and maybe our listeners can grab a pen and paper and they can start drawing it with us.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we draw a circle, and then let's draw a petal. So, well, actually, let's just draw all six. So you draw six petals, basically. Okay, so now if you have a circle and you have six petals around it, then the first petal, let's talk about purpose.
Purpose. Mm-hmm.
So there are emotions related to that drive, that purpose, that dharma, the idea. What is dharma? And there are a lot of terms for it. There's a lot of explanations. But as I say, I try to take a very concrete, non-fluffy approach to life and my teachings. What I have understood about dharma, that it's about purpose. It's about the force of evolution that's deeply driving you from within. Mm-hmm. Like you were talking before this interview, what is driving us. Mm-hmm. And reasons can come along the way, stories can unfold, but I think beyond all that, we are already born with some innate deep calling that's unique to us.
Yeah.
And that dharma, that force, that purpose is important. And there are emotions related to that that show up. And how much those emotions align with your reality around you is directly going to impact how successful you're going to be. Because if you are in an environment where emotions related to your drive, your personal purpose doesn't match to that of the cohort around you, mm-hmm. you're going to waste a lot of time and energy just resolving that conflict, fighting that battle, rather than actually following up on it. So that's first one. But let's go a little bit down. So, from purpose, let's go a little bit down to next petal. And that is the petal of sleep.
Mm.
Yeah.
Very important.
So the idea of sleep in the Vedic philosophy is a little bit deeper than what we understand in terms of sleep, right?
Right.
So there is sleep as just the act of being tired and just going to sleep, and then you just close your eyes and wake up. But the idea of sleep in Vedas and in the monk traditions are that there is a build-up process to it, which is you build up tiredness. Mm. You lose potency as you go through your day. Just think about your phone batteries. They lose charge as you use them. Yeah. So over time, so the sleep cycle is actually building up when you are living. The more and more you perform on your purpose, on your drive, the mental, physical resources are going to be used up, and you're going to create this energetic debt. And then at some point, you will need to take a break and you need to recharge. So then the recharging cycle is there. So there's a discharging part and then there's recharging part. And that is the sleep cycle. So now there are tools and techniques, that you learn as a monk that can make this cycle very efficient so that throughout the day you can be on your purpose, you can be performing at very peak levels without losing too much energy, so that at night you need very little time to just recharge, and then next day you are ready again. So that's the part, and there are emotions related to it. So again, we are talking about emotional energy. So think about all kind of emotions that you experience when you are tired. There are different, and you can create actually problems if there's too much debt in your relationships.
Yeah.
Work because you're just out of it.
Yeah. I've experienced that for sure.
Yeah, you take an overnight flight, you are not properly charged up, and then you meet some important people, and then you say things that you shouldn't have said, you do things that you shouldn't have done, and then when you have rested and you are thinking back, you're like, what did I do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's that. But then there is something more. So let's go to the next petal. The next petal is about anger.
Mm.
So petal of anger is interesting. It's this is a dimension of our heart, and regardless how enlightened or unenlightened you are, and you are going to feel this energy. This energy is there in you. This is a dimension. This is a facet of your heart. Now, when you get enlightened, you are able to work with this energy and use it constructively, do things constructively. But if you are not enlightened, if you don't have the right tools, then this can get compounded. If you are more tired, this can get in the way of you achieving your purpose. And you can just get caught up into this storm created by emotions related to anger energy.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, tools and techniques you learn, very hands-on stuff that can help you manage and actually not just suppress or get rid of anger, because that's not the kind of teachings, at least I stand for. I feel like all dimensions of the heart energy should be explored, and there are some divine purposes to them. So, but you have to know how to work with.
Yeah.
So there is that. But then if you move from anger petal to next petal, then there is the petal of, you want to guess it? It's the petal of violence.
Violent. Okay, we're just getting deeper and more intense here. Yeah.
Yes. So then there's the petal of violence, and this is something that I'll talk more about when we go in the Yogi code. But violence is also part of our nature. Mm. There are, intentional or unintentional actions that we engage in where we are hurting, we are destroying something. And what to do with it, how to manage those emotions, those tendencies, that's a big thing. And I've noticed that a lot of high performers, high achievers, their heart gets so out of whack that this violence petal really blooms and end up hurting themselves a lot, end up hurting others a lot. And no matter how good of a person you are, but if you're not mindfully managing your emotions, and you don't have the right tools and techniques to work with the emotional intelligence aspect of your life, then these things are going to pop up. And if they're not managed and regulated, they are going to destroy you, destroy what you're creating, and hurt other people. Yeah. So there's that, but we'll talk more about how to manage this later.
Just a thought on that. I really like this because, I think anger and violence are a couple of those things that people like to just kind of disavow and repress, or it's like, oh, no, that's not me. I'm a good person. I don't have those. And what I like about what you're saying is that essentially, by not acknowledging that as a part of human nature, and cultivating the skills to manage it, you're actually letting it run free and blossom in a way that it wouldn't otherwise.
Yes, exactly right. And that's why it's important. But you bring up something important, which is this attitude of denial. Yeah. Or the attitude of just giving a blind eye to these important aspects of our human nature. I've been to a lot of spiritual settings, and what really annoys me is some things about the neo-spiritual movements is, I at some point I want to tell them that get real, It's not all hunky-dory kind of stuff in life. There are going to be situations where you are going to feel angry, and maybe sometimes you are supposed to feel angry, otherwise maybe you have no empathy. Because think about it, if there's some injustice going on in the society and you don't feel that that dimension of your heart is opening up, something is wrong with you. Yeah. If a child is being hurt, let's say, by a big company's product, and you don't feel anger towards it, I don't think that you are anywhere near enlightenment. So
yeah. Maybe that's a really important message. Yeah.
How you act on it is different. Of course, an enlightened person wouldn't just break out into violence. Well, understand that energy and take that energy and do something constructive with it. But
Exactly.
acknowledging it is important. So
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
there is anger and violence, but let's move on from there. So I will show it to you, even though our audiences cannot see it. See, I started at here,
Mm-hmm.
and then you kind of go down. So this, we were taking a downward turn, but now we are about to start coming up. So we'll start seeing more upward moving
Okay.
energies.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's go for it.
So the next thing is play. Uh, so there are, as human beings, we have emotions related to playfulness and fun, and uh, and it's important. One thing that I think has hurt the corporate communities and the entrepreneurs and high performers and other people too is when there's too much of suppression of this playful energy.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would have achieved the kind of technical innovation we are achieving now, maybe a few decades back, if it was not so much this black tie and formal and monolithic culture.
Yeah.
I think the millennials are changing it. There is more acceptance, there's more fun in the workplace. And because of that, there is this greater mental and emotional agility, and we are finding all kind of unique technologies and innovative things popping up. So play has a huge role, and it also helps you kind of delegate and regulate other energies that we just talked about so far. So there's that, but then how to integrate it? We can talk about all these concepts, but how to integrate it in your work environment, in your relationships, in your personal life. And that is something that we do at DMT by working with person and customizing that aspect with people.
Beautiful.
Yep.
So do we have any other, we had playfulness, and then do we have any other petals?
Yeah, so we only have gone so far 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And
There are 6, right? 6 petals?
well, there are actually 8
Oh,
petals.
8 petals. Okay.
Yeah. So
And just so everybody knows who's listening, when we started the flower, we start on the petal that's at about 3 o'clock, and then we're moving in a clockwise direction as we go through these other petals, just to kind of give you orientation.
yes, so that's exactly right. So we're starting from 3 and going clockwise. We'll go all the way back to 3. So there are 3 more petals left here. We have covered so far 5. There are 8 total. So the next idea is letting go. This is an important aspect. So there are energies related to this aspect of letting go. But the thing is, when you're talking about letting go, our society doesn't really prepare for it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of there's a socially engineered way of making sure that we don't let go.
Right.
There's a lot of corporate structure is promote consumption.
Yeah.
How do you promote consumption? Inevitably, when you are trying to do that mindlessly, you train people, you train societies to not let go and want more.
To be attached to the things they're supposed to consume. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, being an entrepreneur, this is this is something even for me, working with people, working with entrepreneur, like how do you build that in to the systems, to the services, to the structures, into the life that you build for yourself? How do you build that? And how important it is? Because if you don't let go, first of all, you don't create the possibility, the room for something new to come, something new to grow, and then maybe there is baggage that is constantly slowing you down from the past. Mm-hmm. So letting go is important. I guess everybody who's listening probably understands and also knows how hard it is to let go.
Yeah.
So maybe few things more harder than others, but it can get pretty hard. So we help people at DMT by giving the tools and techniques that I learned as a monk so that they can also easily let go and make letting go process a more manageable and more easier process rather than it being a difficult or like heart-wrenching process.
Right.
So we have that. Then we have two more petals. So next petal is about pleasure, desire. And this is an aspect of our heart. We feel it. Uh, the reality is your brain is programmed for it. There is these rhythms of hormones and neurotransmitters that take place. Talk about glands like pituitary glands, let's say, there are a specific time, specific chemicals released that make you want to do things and experience certain things. And one grief I have with the spiritual traditions, some of the traditions and orthodoxy is this dimension that really has not been accepted and explored a lot, which is funny to me because what I'm talking about is what Buddha was talking about. And he, if you read deeply enough and learn with the real traditional masters, these are topics that are openly discussed and you are encouraged to explore and develop a more enlightened, mindful relationship with these dimensions of life. But
so, in other words, what you're saying is that this, because I feel like we're sort of skirting around this idea, which is commonplace, which is that, you shouldn't have desire. You should somehow, repress desire or control desire. And you're talking about a much more kind of seemingly open-minded, but a kind of an exploratory relationship with something that is quite natural, rather than something that is seen to be kind of evil and not conducive to the spiritual life.
Yes, exploratory and mindful and constructive. You can use the cycles of desire and emotions related to it to create actually something beautiful for yourself and others. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say a desire around food. We all feel desires around food.
Yeah, we do.
To some degrees. Now, if you just mindless, well, there are two approaches I've seen majority of people take. Either they suppress it and they just force themselves to eat things that they don't really appreciate, that don't really enjoy, but because somebody told them this is the right thing to do, this is the good thing to eat, they do that.
Yeah.
Or there are other group of people who just mindlessly jump into it, and whatever they feel like eating, they just eat that, and they just enjoy it. And I think both can be very harmful. But there is a third and much better way, which is go explore. If you feel like having something, eating something, don't just go ahead and jump and eat it. First, just pay attention to that desire. Be mindful of what it is that you are actually feeling. And sometimes, maybe not in the beginning, but if you do enough practice and with enough time, you'll actually start to realize that you're misunderstanding your own desires. Maybe when you wanted to eat that chocolate cake, what you really wanted is maybe a little bit of water.
Yeah.
Maybe when you were wanting to eat that piece of chocolate cake, what you really needed was more iron, maybe more protein, maybe more nourishment. Maybe you needed a hug. So,
but Swami, you're not telling me that I can't have my chocolate cake, are you? Because I'm going to need that cake.
Have your chocolate cake, absolutely. I actually want to encourage you. I want to encourage you. If we can do a little exercise. If you feel like really having chocolate cake, buy it. Buy the best kind. And then, sit down with it. Before you just devour it, at least think about what are the things going on inside you? What are you feeling? Then when you're eating it, pay more attention to it.
Yeah.
Over time, you'll realize that this process takes time, may sound even a little bit, exuberant and not as monastic. But over time, the things that you really don't need fall off, and things that you really, really need, you start to understand.
Yeah.
And then the cycle of desire becomes pratyahara. So there's big misunderstanding in the yoga world about pratyahara. Pratyahara usually is understood as suppression of senses. But prati means towards, and ahara means feeding. So feeding for instead of not feeding. So the pratyahara true practice is feeding yourself the right things.
Mm.
To create the coherence, to create the vibrance, to create the harmony, to create the vibrance potency in you. So when you look at yogis and you see them that, oh, they don't eat certain things, well, because there's only little room. You don't put garbage in your stomach.
Yeah.
you They want to just only put the things that they really need. So maybe to an outsider it looks like they are actually sacrificing some pleasure and things, but that's not the case. They're immensely enjoying their spinach bowl. So,
Yeah. Wow, I
so
love that translation of pratyahara. That's so good.
yeah,
Mm.
so that's pratyahara. And then there's the last thing, and the last thing is in the pedal, the
Mm-hmm.
last pedal. And it's interesting how it comes right between the purpose and the purpose at the 3 o'clock and the desire at the 12 o'clock. Right between there, somewhere at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you see this pedal of compassion, pedal of altruism, wanting to give, wanting to love, wanting to support. And you feel these emotions. And, uh, and a lot of times I also find uh, that in more and more in modern families and entrepreneurial environments, not much space is given. And the part of it is that it's talked about, as a dressing on the cake or like a feather on the cap kind of situation,
Mm-hmm.
but it is not integrated as bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when it's not part of the bottom line, then you start to see a society which you start to see very dry, and that's why there's this uh, disenchantment from the general public or the younger generation towards these big monolithic corporations, because somewhere in that culture, that energy of empathy, that energy of altruism, that energy of compassion was not directly integrated to their bottom line goals.
Yeah.
Same thing in the families. You see so many broken relationships, broken hearts, broken families, because there's not proper space given to understand this aspect of your heart. So we work, and we work with the teams, we work with entrepreneurs, we work with individuals, and we help them. We give them the tools to cultivate and understand this aspect of their energy.
Mm.
So these are 8 petals, and it all comes back to the purpose. So it's a cycle, and you basically go through all of it, and you come back to the purpose, and you come back to the purpose. You come back to Dharma, the Dhamma,
Mm.
and then that becomes your beat. You
Yeah.
you always come back to your Dharma, and then everything aligns.
That's beautiful. I love that. And so we could call this the 8 petals of DMT or deep mindfulness training. Is that how you look
Yes.
at it?
So these are the 8 petals of the deep mindfulness training, especially related to the EQ part, the emotional intelligence that I was talking about,
I
and
see.
talking about us being emotional animals, emotional beings, experiencing those emotions in all different situations and how to handle them.
EQ, I just realized that that's in contrast to IQ. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm a little slow today, Swami. That's amazing and so important because I think you're absolutely right. It's we have this focus on an intellectual IQ, and really, I feel like so much of what you said it keeps coming back to is this idea that emotional skills have to be cultivated. They have to be we have to provide space for exercising them, otherwise they become petrified essentially, or they're like a muscle that doesn't ever get used essentially. So now let's let's move into another list of awesome things.
So
The Yogi Code, which is 11 principles of yoga every yogi must follow. So do you want to talk about the Yogi Code generally, and sort of how you have developed it? Obviously, it's not completely new. Some of it comes from the yoga tradition, or perhaps all of it does. But how did you develop these 11 principles?
absolutely, Jacob. So before we move on to Yogi Code, I just want to hit on the last part of the DMT,
Oh, yes, please.
which is the deep drive.
Mm-hmm.
So there's deep mind. We talked about mind. We talked about deep heart and the 8 petals of the heart. And now uh, this third aspect, and which is the motivation.
Mm.
If you don't have a deeper motivation, if you're only driven by these superficial things, then you are headed for a crisis.
Yeah.
And a lot of A-type people do that. They are just driven by these superficial projects. They need to complete one project, then another project, then another project. And there comes a time when they have done enough of those projects, and they're like, well, what am I doing at all?
Yeah.
What is driving? So it's good to prepare from the beginning. And so the deep motivation aspect of the training deals with helping people, removing the self-limiting beliefs, cultivating that deep motivation that is more aligned with the values that, that are more true to their nature. They might not even know what values are actually they are embodying.
Yeah.
So we help them understand, explore those values. And then there's third aspect, and that is energy. If you're just tired, if you don't feel like getting up, if you feel groggy, then your motivation is going to be down, your performance is going to be down. So in that aspect, we also work with people looking at their physical lifestyle, and we try to craft something custom that will help them stay energetic and vibrant throughout their day and throughout their life cycle. So that's the motivation part, and that together makes the DMT, the deep mindfulness training.
Wow. Excellent. So then how does the DMT then connect to the Yogi code? Is there some overlap, or how do we look at sort of what the, what the thrust is of DMT versus, or the 8 petals that we were talking about versus the Yogi code?
So basically, as you can see that, part of my life story is I trained 20 years as a monk in Himalayas.
Yeah.
Other than, going to the school, studying the physiology and health, studying the business. But I guess schools years are, less compared to number of time or years I spent as a monk. And the idea of DMT is basically a distilled down set of knowledge and trainings and framework that I learned as a monk, as a yogi. Basically, Jacob, not everybody wants to become a full-on monk. They want to achieve this high performance. They have these goals in their life, and they are doing something worthwhile. And they just want to sharpen up their competencies, their IQ, EQ, and motivation competencies. And not just want to, in my observation, every entrepreneur needs this. So the DMT part is really designed minus all the fluff and all the exuberance of spirituality, and it's just bare bones of utility tools from the yogic and monkic traditions combined with the modern science that we give out to performers and entrepreneurs and driven people to improve their performance and make their social impact. The Yogi code is more like source code of all this. The mother of everything that I have to offer. And as I told you that my original training is as a monk for 20 years.
Yep.
And I was lucky in many ways. I mean, think about it, even though I was born to a very humble family with just family of yogis, my biggest resource was this beautiful mother and father that I had, and then sisters and brothers. And the goal of life as a unit or as a family, their goal was to create coherence, to live yoga every day. So the profit maximization as a family was not the goal. The goal was bliss maximization, positivity maximization. The days started not with these lists of to-do things, but with prayers and chants, and the food was not so much about how good it can taste, but it was how sattvic it can be. And then the work and service was more about, of my family, it was not about how much we can take from society, but it was how much we can contribute. So, as a family, we played a very important role in our village. My grandfather, my father, they were the gurus, the teachers of their community. And basically, a lot of their day was just spent counseling and then just giving help and direction to the young people and older people in the community so that the community can be more coherent. And so that's what they did. We had enough land, so the sources of income was like we had enough land that gave us enough food, and then there was enough maybe food produce left that could be sold that brought up enough income to pay for college and clothing and stuff. But that was it. But that was enough. That was more than enough. I find myself, I think I couldn't have asked for a better family to be born in,
Yeah.
because they motivated me to and taught me from the very beginning that there are much higher things that as a human being you can experience and achieve and engage in, rather than chasing some arbitrary material object.
Yeah.
So uh, I learned from them, but then I connected with the Sankaracharya tradition, because that's the tradition that we follow,
Hmm.
and I got to meet all these monks and masters. In the beginning, as a child, I spent a lot of time in the ashrams in central India, and the central India is this beautiful place. Lord Ram lived there for 12 years, and we have this little mountain. It's called the Kamadgiri Mountains, Chitrakoot, and every new moon, hundreds of thousands of people came to this
Mm.
place from all the villages around.
Wow.
And they will come, and these are not, people with free time and free resources. These are busy people with very limited time, limited resources. They have crops waiting, they have, other things going on. They, they literally are squeezing out every penny and every minute they can to make this trip. But hundreds of thousands of people from about thousands of villages around will come and just take a circle around and say their prayers and meditate and go back. And it was not based on that, oh, this is a magical mountain, it will make their life better or worse. It was really a matter of connecting with the higher dimensions, higher power, and just being part of that experience.
Yeah.
So that's where I spent a lot of childhood and learning from the monks and masters and my grandfather and father. And then at some point I moved to Himalayas, and in the ashram there at Sankaracharya ashram, I got to have these amazing masters, Mahasiddhas. Some of the teachers, you don't even get to meet unless unless they say yes, you can meet,
Yeah.
which is beautiful, because I've been to many schools. I mean, for example, Hopkins, they only accept 11% people. So like, they're saying no to maybe 90, the 89% or 88% people. But these masters, they have 0% acceptance rate. You can have like maybe 10,000 people come search for them and never see them.
Wow.
So I was lucky, call it the karma from past, or the blessings of the family, that I got to spend time with all these masters and got to learn very deeply all different aspects of Vedas.
Mm.
And so the Yogi Code is something I I've created out of all the teaching, and it is more of a springboard for anybody who's serious and sincere about their spiritual journey. So if somebody really, let's say they wanted to be like, okay, Swamiji, you are a monk, you are a yogi. How do I become a monk? How do I become a yogi? Now I know that I had access to all these masters. I was there. I was born there. Uh, but what about a person, let's say, born in Iowa or New York, and they are like, well, they have this true calling. They want to become this yogi in the true means,
Yeah.
then this question of how do I start? Do I start by, starting singing mantras and started joining, these uh, hippie themed, situations? Do I just take off and travel to the east? Like, what do I do, right? There's a big question there. And the answer is simple. In my all these years of training as a monk and as a yogi, the answer is simple. All that is secondary. The primary thing is a yogi must have a code. You must follow a certain set of values. If
Hmm.
you adopt these certain set of values, the 11 yogi codes, then everything that needs to happen will start to happen. And the yoga will start to blossom. And then the masters uh, that are right for you will start to appear in your life. The situations which are going to enhance your yoga journey will start to emerge in your life. So everything then starts to come. The support of nature starts to come. The
Mm.
yoga just starts to blossom. You have to plant the seeds and just keep nurturing them, and then you create this whole jungle full of bliss. So the Yogi Code is a springboard for a person who wants to take that journey. And it's really come to that realization that you were talking about in the beginning, that there's nothing higher to do than this.
Yeah. Okay, wow, that's a great introduction to the Yogi Code. So now let's sort of unpack them a little bit and go through them one by one, because we'll assume that there are some people listening to this podcast who do want to go on this deeper yogic journey. I would say probably the majority of them do in one form or another. So the first principle is Hatha Yoga Anushasanam. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the first principle is first principle, and it is the very first Yoga Sutra, which is Hatha Yoga Anusasanam. It's highly overlooked. It's like
skip to number 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the message in the plain sight that completely ignored. And the thing is, if you don't understand this first principle, all your readings, everything else, I'm not saying that you're not going to get some utility, but you might as well not have read it, because it's not leading you to that high place. Yeah. So the commitment to this first principle is important. The Hatha Yoga Anusasana means now begins the Anusasana of yoga. Anusasana is what? Is the governance of yoga, the discipline of yoga. But discipline not in the sense of you trying, discipline in the sense of governing a structure like you have governments. So basically you are saying now begins the rule of yoga. And you're saying now, like in this moment. So you're not talking about that in future, I will start allowing yoga to become ruling energy, ruling principle in my life. You're saying now, in this moment, yoga, the coherence, the principle of integration to create bliss will become ruling principle, number one principle in my life. And if you commit to that first principle, you can close all the books and you're fine. Mm-hmm. Because think about it, Jacob. Like if you say that I, Jacob, from today on, gonna allow the idea of yoga, the intelligence of yoga to rule all my actions and all dimensions of my life, do you need anything else? Mm-mm. Because then you are an intelligent being. You are divine human that you are, and every human being is capable of knowing what is coherent, what is not. Yeah. And then if you start with this intention, then your understanding of what is more coherent start to deepen, and over time you'll figure out. And that's the beautiful thing about yogic traditions. You have met, I'm sure you have met, and I have met a lot of masters from around the world who have never received any formal training. Yeah. But somehow they have come to understand this first principle, that all my actions, all my efforts, all my dimensions of life are going to be ruled with the intention of creating yoga, creating coherence, creating integration that leads to bliss and harmony. Mm-hmm. And they are doing that, and out of that, everything else and beautiful knowledge and work is created. So that's the first principle. And somebody asked me, well, what makes a person yogi? A yoga certification from Yoga Alliance doesn't make you a yogi.
Nope.
Now, getting initiated by any master also doesn't make you a yogi. Being a high priest or low priest doesn't make you a yogi. Being a famous person who can do bendy stuff doesn't make you a yogi. What makes you a yogi is, are you committed to this first principle? If you have chosen this first principle, you can be in coma and you are the greatest yogi. Yeah. But if you have not committed to this, then you can be anybody. And in my eyes, from what I have learned from my masters, I would not consider that person a yogi.
Yeah.
So
good
that's
point.
The first principle.
Yeah. So then the second one, which blossoms out of that, is compassion.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on compassion as the second principle?
Well, compassion is a prerequisite for you to be able to act on this commitment. There are a lot of other principles that are in it, but unless you have compassion, you will miss the point. Mm. If you are not compassionate, if you're not kind, you'll miss the point. And I've encountered many young, even old, driven people who have given their life to the path of yoga, who are very bitter in their approach.
Yeah.
There's no consideration for the fine feelings and emotions and of other living beings. In that case, how can there be any progress? If God is true, if these higher beings, higher energies are true, in their right mind, why would they let you elevate to anything higher in life if you're not compassionate? Because if you're not compassionate and you gain power, especially spiritual power, that means that can be dangerous for nature, that can be dangerous for this existence.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be compassionate. And if you're compassionate, then all other things will come easily. So
Yeah.
it's prerequisite. You need to be compassionate.
Mm. But, and I like in the notes that I have for this, the compassion is something that you remark on, is how a lot of people consider themselves compassionate. Because I think anybody out there is probably like, oh yeah, I'm compassionate, because we're sort of trained to think that's sort of what you have to be. So what's the difference between, what is the difference between someone who might think they're compassionate, but actually practicing compassion, and how does one take the steps to kind of start to cultivate more compassionate action in their life?
Yes. So the term for compassion is karuna,
Mm-hmm.
and karuna is a matter of that being able to connect, being able to feel that oneness. The ka means taking your potency, all your energy that is there, and making it focused.
Mm.
And then ra is the idea of the threefold abilities you have to manipulate, which is basically you can create something, you can sustain something, you can destroy something. And then ra is the point that you direct to. So the compassion is basically, in a very technical sense, this action, this activity of taking your totality, focusing it, and then intelligently choosing these three areas, whether to dissolve something, whether to create something, whether to sustain a reality that matters for point A, point B, person B, living
Mm.
being A, living being B. And you want to do that in a way that creates a more blissful reality, more mudita for that person, more mudita for you. So that is compassion.
Mm. Mm. That's a really beautiful way to put it. So now, our third principle is courage.
Yes.
So, what about courage?
Well, you need courage. So these are two qualifications you need. First, you need commitment, and these are the two compassion and courage.
Mm-hmm.
If think about Gandhi, think about Martin Luther King. What are the defining factors there? These are two great yogis, that a common person can understand about. First, you have to have that empathy, that calling to contribute positively to people, to the environment that you're part of. But the second, you need courage, because you can have that, but sometimes that requires standing up to a challenge. It can come in form of authority. It can come in form of just the sheer amount of effort you need to put in. Mother Teresa, think about her,
Mm-hmm.
how much effort she had to put in to help. And a lot of times you will be judged in the process. You'll be laughed in the process. You will be, told that these are pipe dreams. These are moonshots. But in order to sustain the process, the action of yoga, you will need to be courageous, and you'll need all kind of courage, because all kind of challenges will come. Just because you are yogi, you don't get a special treatment. So
Yeah, I think that's an important one, and fear, which is sort of the counterpart to this, or what you're sort of seeking to conquer through your courage, is something that is kind of rampant in so many different ways, and so I appreciate that as being one of these principles, because I don't think courage is often included in some of the kind of outlines of yogic values, at least the ones that I've seen. I'm thinking, the 8 limbs and stuff like that. So courage is a great one. So in then number 4 is abhyasa, which means practice. And I imagine by this it's not just about, a fancy asana practice, but it's about something else. So do you want to talk about what abhyasa or practice is from this perspective?
Yes, so the compassion and courage were the two qualifications you needed. And then there is the idea of practice. So there's more. Okay, so now let's say you have commitment and you have the right qualifications. You have the courage. You're not going to succumb to fears. You're going to overcome. Then, okay, how to ensure that when you take an action, it's going to lead to maximum utility, maximum impact.
Right.
And then the next two yogi codes are about maximizing the impact of your practice, your action. Mm-hmm. So abhyasa, and after that is vairagya. Mm-hmm. So abhyasa is a way you practice yoga. And again, remember the defining principle of yoga is the commitment to following the rule of yoga in all dimensions, all areas of life. Yeah. So any action that you are intending to take to create higher level of coherence, higher level of integrity is yoga. So how to make sure that that action bears highest amount of impact, highest amount of fruit? First thing, you need to understand the process of practicing it, how to make sure that the practice is potent. So whether it's asana, whether it is you trying to help a community full of people be more happy, whether it is you trying to grow life in the farm, for you to be successful, you'll need abhyasa. And abhyasa has three aspects to it. So abhyasa has nirantarya, which is timeless commitment. So first of all, you'll have to be able to commit timelessly to this idea of whatever you're doing, to that practice. You can't be like half in, half out kind of situation. Yeah. Then nirantarya, then you need consistency. So you need to be working regularly on it. So you can't be inconsistent. I remember hearing a master saying that being a thief can be a part-time job. Being an honest person is a full-time job. You can't be like, I don't steal for 23 hours and on 24th I steal. But it's a 24-hour thing. It's a consistent thing. You have to, if you are about yoga, then you have to be consistent. There's no vacation days. There's no something like, okay, well, today I'm going to eat octopus, leg, but tomorrow I'll be, animals again or something like that. So you need to be nice. So today I'm going to be bad to my friend. I'm going to yell at them. But tomorrow I'm going to put on this mala and, be this nice gentleman. Right. So consistencies. Mm-hmm. And then you need the third thing. Dirghakala, nirantarya is the consistency. No gap. And then there is the satkara. Satkara is the reverence. You need to have a reverent relationship with your practice. So a lot of times I hear, let's say, in my class, let's say decision models, if I'm learning linear programming, it's a very dry subject, crunching numbers. Sometimes I hear people say, it's such a drag to do this. But having that attitude doesn't help. Attitude has to be, it's such a blessing. You have to you have to assign a divine identity to that action. And then you have to do it as an act of worship. So you have to have that active reverence towards all the actions. Yeah. It's better not to take an action, but if you're going to take an action, have that reverence towards it. So sometimes I become this odd person in a classroom where I'm like, no, I'm really enjoying it. And everybody's like, what a freak.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have to be limited of that. So you need to have that reverence towards your practice. If you don't have that, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's abhyasa. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3 steps that you need to put in when you're doing your practice or actions.
Excellent. And then this is connected to vairagya, which is sort of often translated as non-attachment or dispassion.
Uh-huh.
So how is that related to abhyasa? Because you sort of posited them together.
Yes. So those are the two aspects to make your practice more successful. So the first is the quality of action itself, which is the abhyasa. Then there's the quality of attitude that you take when you're acting. And that has to be the attitude of vairagya. Vairagya has been highly misunderstood, just like many other aspects.
Hmm.
And usually people think about it as indifference,
Yeah,
dispassion.
yeah.
That's not the meaning. It's so the objective is dispassion, but it is subject to three variables. So the three variables will be uh, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita. So when you are doing your practice, you have to be indifferent to all kind of pulls and pushes in order to ensure that these three variables are maximized in your action: friendliness, in your action, compassion, and through your actions, greater reality, greater utility for you and the environment is ensured.
Hmm.
And to ensure that, all the other interests, have to be put secondary. So your likes or dislikes, for example, maybe you don't want to stay up and use those 3 hours to finish that document that is needed, maybe, to enact a project that's going to help a lot of people. But in that moment, you have to put aside that personal discomfort and stay up, maybe take the red eye and do that work so that it can help maybe another 1,000 people in front of you. So the maitri, the karuna, the friendliness, the compassion, and the greater good comes first.
Hmm.
And you have, in order to ensure that, and in order to ensure the coherence, you have to be indifferent for personal likes and dislikes, personal comfort and discomfort.
I
So
see.
that's the idea.
So it's detachment as a way of actually being, because like you're saying, it's often misunderstood that it means sort of like you're detached from life, but really it's sort of detached from your expectations, not attached to certain expectations, likes and dislikes, so that you can be more available or more connected in these three
Yeah,
different
if anything,
facets.
you are detached to any nuisance that can get in the way
Yeah,
of maximizing coherence.
right.
So that, but a lot of the misunderstood part is that a lot of people uh, use this as a cop out where they're like, I don't care,
Hmm.
now
Yeah,
kind of situation, and then they start to become delinquent in their responsibilities towards their families, towards the society, and that's highly misunderstood aspect of it.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. So now Danam, or charity, as number six.
Yeah. So number six, Dhanam, number seven, Yasna, and number eight, Tapas. Those three are the three values
Okay.
of a yogi. So basically, when you become a yogi, when you become a monk, what does it mean? What does it really mean? I mean, we talked about it means commitment, but what does it really mean? What are the activities? What is your job? What is your description like? What is motivating you? So there are three things that should be constantly motivating a yogi or a monk. And the only three things. The first is yajna, which means being a productive part of the ecosystem that that you are part of.
Hmm.
So you need to ensure that you are capable, whatever level of capacity you have to put that capacity to serve in the service of the ecosystem you're part of.
Yeah.
So do something productive, do something that is contributing to the ecosystem you are surviving in. And you will see this example as this concept of seva happening in all the spiritual traditions. Christian monks, Buddhist monks, Vedic monks, they were spending a lot of time doing tapas, but they were and being secluded and doing their practices. but they all took time to serve their immediate environment. They did something. They planted trees. They went helped out with the villagers. Whatever it is, they did something valuable. So you have to engage in some productive work. There are a lot of lazy bum yogis out there, or the people who call themselves yogis. Uh, that's like the laziness and yoga are like complete opposite of each other. You have to be very productive and like a productive part of the society. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the first value.
Okay.
Then so that's the yajna I'm talking about. Then there is dhanam, and dhanam is this idea of giving, sharing. So as a result of your work, whatever level work you do in life, you're always going to have some returns. Nature is very generous, and it's constantly giving you, and you accumulate wealth. Physical, material, intellectual wealth is generated just by the process of being a conscious being.
Yeah.
And as a yogi, you must consciously not let it accumulate. You must set systems, processes, and enact actions that constantly maximizing your sharing ability. So you want to share, you want to give. So you don't only want to be a productive member of the society, but as a result, the knowledge that you gain, the wealth that you gain, you want to share it. You want to share it with others. So you don't want energy to become stagnant. And that is the second value. So there's yajna, and then there's dhanam. And then there's the third value. And that third value is tapas. And this is the value that gets really highlighted, I think, in a lot of yogis and monks' life.
Yeah.
It's important. And the tapas is about not necessarily austerities. That's how, again, it's, I think, very third-person looking from outside in. But tapas, reality is tapas means fire.
Yeah.
And you are generating fire. But what kind of fire? You're not burning tenders. You are, you are creating transformative fire.
Yeah.
So through your actions. And it can be in all dimensions. So you can be doing physical practices to create positive transformation in your physiology. You can be doing intellectual work that is creating transformation in your nervous system. You do meditations to transform your consciousness, and then you do service to further deepen that transformative power. So there are many ways to generate this power. But ultimately, yogi, being a monk, is like a very busy and responsible way of living, actually.
Yeah.
Because you are constantly, every day, you have to think about these three things. And you have to evaluate yourself that, okay, how well I'm doing on these three areas, these three goals, and is there anything more I can do?
Wow, excellent, beautiful. So then we move on to ahimsa, and actually to the root yama and niyama. And we have ahimsa, which is the first of the yamas, nonviolence. And then we have tapas again, which is the root niyama. So how does, I guess, we'll talk about this root yama and niyama, and then I'm interested to see how we should understand the second instance of tapas in this kind of 11-step process. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So after all this is done, after we have talked about the beginning, the proclamation, the commitment, the sankalpa of being a yogi, we talked about the qualifications, the potencies that you need. We talked about the values, and we talked about the actions. Now we are talking about a structure of a yogi. So what a yogi, like now at this point, we are ready to kind of evaluate this architecture, the active and the silent, the dynamic and the silent aspect of yogi. So when you do all these things, you start to transform. You start to become a different spiritual being. Mm-hmm. And it has two aspects. There are the static aspects, just the silent aspects. And then there are the aspects which are the dynamism. So there is, like, let's say, the idea of the qualities of consciousness, and then those qualities of consciousness in action. So yamas are more like the qualities of consciousness that is starting to now emerge. And then you can start driving, you can start, further working on it. You can take an active role in sculpting those areas. So yamas are those. Yama is literally architecting divinity in your consciousness, in your physiology.
Architecting divinity. That's awesome. I love that phrase.
Yeah. So how do you do it? So there are, for that reason, there are these 5 yamas, but 5 yamas are way too many. I like to simplify things, and everything else will happen if you just pick the root.
Yeah.
Maharishi used to say, water the root, enjoy the fruit. And ahimsa is number 1. So, but what is ahimsa? Ahimsa translated usually as non-violence. But that's like such a negative way to define it. It's like you're defining it as an absence of violence.
Right.
Defining it through violence, like that's okay. If I was to define you as Jacob is not a bad guy, right? If I said that.
Womp womp.
Yeah, it sounds kind of condescending, and it's okay. Jacob is not a bad guy, but then who is he?
Not a great guy, but not a bad guy. Yeah.
Jacob is a great guy. So, so here's the thing about ahimsa. The Sanskrit is a beautiful language, and it has 3, so every alphabet has a meaning behind it. So let's decode it. So there's A, and A means unbounded, infinite. So the Brahm, the field of all possibilities, that is your true nature. That is your consciousness. And that realization will start to become more and more clear and apparent as you do everything else we have talked about so far. But then you can practice that A. So A, Reem, Sa. So when the unbounded and then the Reem or the Ha is this vibration that defines the process of creating something. Yeah. When you take A and you mold it, that process of molding, that process of architecting is Reem. And then Sa. Then Sa is created. Sa is you, your individual identity, your individual chitheads. Yeah. So your individual fabric of consciousness, which is made by the substance of unified field, the unbounded field of consciousness. When in its purest form, you take the substance of unified field, or field of unbounded consciousness, and then you mold it to build your personality, to build your individual self. That is ahimsa. So it is a process of embodying unboundedness. So that's the non-violence. That's ahimsa. So it's not just absence of, like not beating somebody or something like that. In reality, it is every time there is boundedness, there's limitations, the act of dissolving those limitations and creating something more unbounded. And in your personality and in your environment, that is ahimsa. So this is a more empowering, more forward-looking way to understand the idea of ahimsa, rather than just beating around the bush and let's not beat each other. Yeah. So
wow,
I
love that, embodying the unboundedness. I've never ever heard that approach to ahimsa before. That's really excellent.
Yes. So then there are once you do that, then why do I say that it's a root yama? Because there are 4 other yamas, right? Yeah. There's So how does doing ahimsa will lead you to become more truthful? Well, it's obvious, right? If you start to embody more unboundedness in your individuality, and then so you see the ahimsa. We ended as sa. Now in satya you pick up from sa. So you're individual, and then ta and ya. Ta means the surface, Sa means you, Ta means the surface, and Ya is the expressive. So when you will start to express your unboundedness, obviously that's going to be the truth. There's no room to lie there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no way you can be truthful unless you start to embody more and more unboundedness, because otherwise the truth can become relative.
Yeah.
So, only in proportion to how much unboundedness you embody is how truthful you truly can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, it just becomes this philosophical talk.
Mm.
So, and then from the Satya, you talk about Asteya, which is like, again, we ended at and then you start at and Asteya. And then, that start to manifest around you as this very honest, very clean transaction, very clean way of working with each other. So Asteya basically means not stealing.
Yeah.
Again, I like to look at it more positively, which is like being more honest, being more clean. And then the Asteya leads to Brahmacharya, which is basically the life of Bra, again means unbounded, and that kind of, so the first three steps lay down a foundation for a lifestyle of Brahman, of unboundedness. And then that is what leads to aparigraha, because when you create a culture of unboundedness, then people don't want to hold on to their little things. They actually want to share. Then there's more flow.
Mm.
So if you, since I've worked a lot with business people, I'll tell you, if you create a culture of unboundedness, suddenly people are more willing to share their intellectual properties,
Exactly,
their abilities. But if there was no unboundedness, there's deceit instead of truth. There's a lot of coveting, and there's just definitely not a culture of unboundedness. So this is how you do it. So you don't have to think about all these other things. You just have to think about ahimsa, just one part, that how can I become more unbounded? And do little things. And that's how you start to practice this.
Wow, I really appreciate that kind of that sort of the way you develop that sequence from the beginning of the yamas. I've never heard them unpacked in that way. It's really kind of illuminating on so many levels to think about them in that as a kind of sequence that sort of just kind of blossoms out of ahimsa. So you say that this is such the same thing is true of tapas. Is that correct? Is similar kind of evolution out of tapas when we look at the niyamas?
Yes, so the tapas is true, and actually, the reality is the saucha is the first niyama. But
Yeah.
I have, if you study a lot of quantitative sciences, you learn how to adjust it for the immediate environment. Mm-hmm. So you start with constraints, and understanding the current environment, I realized that maybe in Satyuga, maybe in the time when people had unbounded amount of fire in them, unbounded amount of energy, then you will start with saucha, which is the act of purification. But the reality is, a lot of people in Kali Yuga, in current age, lack enough energy. Literally the energy is scarce. So my suggestion is to start with tapas. Start by building the transformative power. Don't worry so much about being pure being from the very beginning. Just think about, throwing yourself in the processes, in the courses, in the actions and situations where you can gain more and more this transformative power. And then that will ultimately lead to purity, because once you heat something up, the impurity starts to melt away. And then that can lead to, santosa, which is the idea of, being more content, because obviously the irritants are gone, the impurities are gone. So what happens when the irritants are gone out of a system? It's more calm, it's more santosa. So santosa doesn't mean that being satisfied with whatever limited you have. It really means having less irritable state of consciousness.
Yeah.
So then everything else comes. Then the swadhyaya comes, which is about when there is more light, more energy, you start to feel more, be more mindful, which is the study of the self, swadhyaya. And then once you have done all that, then truly you start to feel the energy of God, and this divine energy, and you can have a pranic connection, Iswara Pranadhanani. So that's how the niyamas, and those are more active dimensions. So remember, I talked yamas more as like constructs of consciousness. These are more like processes of consciousness.
I see.
And one I recommend for the current, social and structure in the social landscape we are in is tapas. That throw yourself out there to gather up more fire.
Yeah.
Whichever way that you can do.
All right, excellent. So now we're on to our last principle, which is no niyamagraha.
Yes. So this is the last, and this is not least, it's very important. So I've been to way too many monasteries by this point, and schools and businesses and households. I've actually spent a lot of time living with different families. I travel a lot.
Yeah.
And I found that people develop these stupid traditions. That's the way I can tell you. And it started with something positive, something good. There's a story that long time ago, there was a marriage happening in India, and the family had a cat. Now, the cat was just jumping in all the sweets and all this stuff and creating a lot of ruckus. So to ensure that the wedding goes all right, they took the cat and put her under like a big pot, basically covered her under that so that she doesn't run around. But then because it was marriage, everybody forgot about the cat, and like 2 days gone by and the cat is still under there, so suffocated and died. But
oh no.
I know, it's a sad story, poor cat. But suddenly the marriage is over. Now the bride is coming back to the groom's house, and she's entering, and the mother-in-law realizes there is dead cat in the house. She's like, before she enters, let me take out this dead body. She takes that dead cat and walks out with it. And the bride sees that, dead cat is being taken out. Okay, cool. Maybe that's a family tradition that, every time a bride comes in, you sacrifice a cat. So she never asked, mother-in-law never talked about it. And then what happened over time is mother-in-law died.
Started, yeah.
There were new, children and new marriages. And this time they were like, we have to plan for a marriage party. Let's buy some cats. We need to sacrifice some cats. So you can see that how, something innocent, some action that just happens, it can turn into these stupid traditions.
Yeah.
And I've seen it all over the world, in all different cultures, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, corporate cultures, family traditions, little stuff. And people get caught up into these samskaras, these processes that might have served a purpose long time ago, but do not serve a purpose. Or they might have served a purpose 2 weeks ago, but don't serve a purpose now.
Yeah.
So the yogis, there's a saying, at least, from the tradition I come, that there are no rules. There is one rule, and that's the first principle, and then there are no rules. Everything else is a guideline. So
it's not like the 10 Commandments, then, basically.
Yeah. Don't get caught up. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings by saying that it's not like 10 Commandments, because I love all the religions and all religious people. I just want to tell people there that.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
So
that's very diplomatic of you.
Not just real that, because I've been friends with a lot of beautiful Christian families, and regardless of intellectual anomalies in theories and this and that, the community still does a lot of good. So does a lot of Vedic people. And there's always, like you can always sit down and intellectually try to dissect. And you can say that, look, for logic, maybe you don't get A+, but but practice, a lot of these communities, they came together, they tried to do something good. So I have to look at that. But the no niyamagraha part is, don't blindly accept rules. Don't blindly bind yourself. Don't let rules get in the way of everything else that we talked about in the yoga cut.
Yeah, yeah. I love that because it's sort of like after you've outlined all these principles, it's like, but don't get too attached to all these principles. There's just one that matters. Yeah. And that's an incredible story about the cat. I really like that story. I'm going to use that, I think, in my own teachings. But one thing that I've sort of just came up as you were saying it was, I'm curious what you think then, because obviously we see this all over the world, and we might say that some of the kind of resistance to change is often grounded in a kind of fear of letting go of these things that are again, they're just like they're empty rituals, really. So what is it that what is it that stops us or limits us from being able to kind of like let go of some of these essentially old habits?
Well, I guess that's a conversation for when somebody signs up for deep mindfulness training in the
Right.
easy part.
There you go. That's a good answer. So then, yeah. So then, let's actually end on that note. Then, for those that want to actually explore more with you and engage in some of your activities, where can they learn more about DMT, Deep Mindfulness Training? And also the Swami Yoga Club, which we didn't mention, which is also another program that you're doing. So maybe we can just end on that note of sharing with people some resources and how they can further explore your work and get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So currently, we are running two ventures. One is especially for yogis, who are interested in deep, authentic teachings of yoga, and if you want one-stop, resource for real deep teachings of yoga, then I'm willing to give all my 20 years of training to you. Just go to swamiyogaclub.com and sign up. It's a online space. Basically, once you sign up as a member, you get to join me 3 times every month live, and we take an aspect of yoga and we go really deep. So far, we have been in a Kundalini journey. So there are a few more months left on that journey, and I'm going to give everything a yogi will need to awaken the Kundalini there. And then we will move on to explore other aspects. And another venture is deep mindfulness training. It is for high performers, high achievers, and entrepreneurs, students, executives, and business teams. Policymakers, anybody who wants to basically perform at the peak level and create maximum results. And they can go to deepmindfulness.co, and there is a description of DMT training. They can read it. If they're interested, there's an inquiry form, and they can write to us about their needs. Again, I take very hands-on approach, so it's very customized training. That's why in the deep mindfulness training, you'll have to fill out an inquiry form. You can't just sign up, or you can't just buy in. And then we will assess your needs, and it starts a conversation, and we'll see, how we can help you.
Excellent. So that's swamiyogaclub.com and deepmindfulness.co, or is deepmindfulnesstraining.co?
Deepmindfulness.co.
Okay, excellent. Well, I want to thank you, Swami, for joining me. This has been a really lovely conversation. I certainly feel like I've had new insights into things that are quite familiar to me, but I really love the kind of fresh and quite pragmatic way that you approach a lot of these topics. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
It's a pleasure, Jacob. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed these conversations myself. And, when you sent me an invitation, I had looked into your venture, the Chitheads, and the embodied philosophy, and it really got me excited and intrigued, because I was like, finally, there is a venture that's talking about living it and not just talking about it. So very inspired by your work. Keep it up, and in any way, I can serve, my team can serve, we are always here.
Thank you so much.